there's a lot of Epstein stuff coming out, and it looks like your kind of prediction was very fortuitous. What do you make of the British government saying we have to fight migrants? The best way to fight migrants is with national ID. Do you share some of the same kind of skepticism about J.D. Vance? Or are you someone that sees Bitcoin as a freedom asset, or do you see it more as like a track, trace, and database asset?
Let's make you president. We're going to put you, Luke, in the Oval Office. You have to decentralize. We're a prisoner of the economic model. I was invited to have lunch with aliens, and I turned it down. I thought it was a setup.
And with aliens? They actually said aliens?
Whatever those UFOs flying around the planet are, they're using these kinds of technologies. The civilization we're part of is interacting with one or more civilizations that are more technologically advanced than us. We have Jared Kushner saying he's going to be the last generation to not live forever or the first to live forever.
Thank you so much, Catherine Austin Fitts, for joining us here today. I know I've been a huge fan of your work for an extremely long time. You've definitely been hitting the nail on the head here for an extremely long time here, as of course you have worked within government and seen a lot, especially at HUD. You're also doing a lot of really incredible work at Solari, Solari Report. We have those links. We have the articles that you sent us here. But I think the first question that I really wanted to delve into and kind of get into is your interview from August 2025, where you talked about the report card that you would give Donald Trump on how he put in the control grid, and the fact that at the end of the year they might try to get rid of him with the Epstein stuff. We're at the end of the year. There's a lot of Epstein stuff coming out, and it looks like your kind of prediction was very fortuitous and was very correct. Do you have any?
But I'm not sure I'm correct about this. Because we're watching the Washington drip, and there's no doubt that Trump is getting hurt by that drip. If you look at his disapproval ratings, it's down again this week. So that is definitely happening. Whether or not they take him out yet, I can't. It's a guess.
Yeah, that's been my argument, because as soon as this whole Epstein scandal came out, a lot of right-wing personalities were saying it's just going to blow over. It's not a major issue. Don't worry about it. I'm like, you don't understand how politics works. Like, you don't understand the things that are happening behind the scenes, especially with the kind of intel agencies and how they play out a lot of these things in the long run. And it's definitely been something that I think Trump has handled extremely incorrectly. Whoever is advising him, I think they're advising him incorrectly. But I think, the criticisms you make, especially about the surveillance grid, are right on the money, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. There was just an announcement by Apple that you will now have your digital ID on your iPhone, with me responding, no. Please, I do not want this. As they're like, yeah, don't worry. It's just a digital passport on your phone. It's so convenient. It's so easy. And I'm like, this is leading us towards a pathway of just total information awareness, surveillance grid, cattle into the slaughter, in my own personal opinion. Do you see it the same way, or do you have a different take on it?
So I think, both sides of the uniparty have been steadily building the control grid. But there's no doubt since the Trump administration came in, they have been steadily building the control grid. We expect the Clarity Act to pass before Thanksgiving. The Genius Act is passed. And if there is an argument to be made that Vance is being positioned to move into the presidency, it would be because if you look at what it takes to lead the stablecoin and asset tokenization effort globally, if you are going to try and switch from a non-programmable money to a programmable money, and not just do it in the United States, but worldwide, Vance is better positioned to lead that effort than Trump. So if a switch happens, then I think it's because the team that wants to create, to institute programmable money in the control grid and use it to maintain dollar dominance worldwide sees Vance as the horse to ride.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people on the right are very big fans of J.D. Vance. They kind of see him as the kind of predecessor to Donald Trump, the next kind of in-line person. But for me, I'm just a little bit skeptical of it personally. For me, it's like too perfect, right? It's too movie-esque in my own in my own opinion. Do you share some of the same kind of skepticism about JD Vance, as a lot of people have been bringing up his ties to Palantir and other major type of technocrats as well?
So I can't personalize this. Let's make you president. We're going to put you, Luke, in the Oval Office. So President Luke is in the Oval Office.
We're ending the Federal Reserve immediately. The Federal Reserve Banks ended.
No, we are not. I'll tell you why we're not going to do that, and you're going to agree with me. We're not going to do that first. So you have $6 trillion a year of expenses. You're spending $6 trillion a year. You're getting $4 trillion of revenues, and you have to borrow $2 trillion, which means the bankers have you over the barrel.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
you don't have agency. You are not a principal. You are in a debt trap, and you have to do what you're told.
Yes.
So you can't. It doesn't matter who we put in the box, and there, yes, there are incremental differences and incremental changes, but whoever you put in the box is going to be in the same debt trap. And if you've ever heard, I don't know if you've ever heard my Red Button story, but it's a very famous story. Everybody in America wants their check. So you're over a barrel because the people want the check and the bankers hold the checkbook. Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So all solutions require that you get out of that trap. And you can't get out of, if you want to get out of the trap, and economically it's possible to get out of the trap, but you need 3,100 counties in America to change what they're doing and how they're doing, and every county is different. So there can't be central control. You have to decentralize. And of course, that is anathema. Everybody in Washington gets their political contributions from centralizing more of the economy. Right? That's why you have this giant sucking sound into Washington. So we're a prisoner of the economic model. Now, if you look at the tech bros, they're trying to change the economic model to one where they institute programmable money. They use it globally to stabilize and dollar dominance, and they're offering a solution which you and I know is slavery, and we have no interest in it. And I don't think it's going to work, but that's the push. The push is to replace the current dollar dominant system, that came up under the Bretton Woods with a technocratic control system, but continuing the dollar.
Yeah, Donald Trump made some very interesting comments about this. I don't know if you saw this a couple of weeks ago, but someone asked him during a summit about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, and then he kind of came out and shocked a lot of the crypto bros and saying maybe we'll use Bitcoin in order to deal with the federal debt that we have. What do you make of his answer saying that specifically?
To me, it's not clear what he means. I mean, part of the problem is when you have, anyone from Donald Trump to Larry Fink talking about the financial system, they're speaking very conceptually and the nuts and bolts aren't clear. And a lot of times, to me, it doesn't make sense. Now, we've done a really deep dive at Solari on stablecoins. The Genius Act has passed. The Secretary of Treasury has been very clear about what they're up to. And so we can put together a very detailed map of what stablecoins are doing and how they want to use them. And so that's clear. But when Trump talks about how they're going to use Bitcoin, how they're going to use asset tokenization, it's not at all clear. And there are several possibilities. And we've talked to, Mark Goodwin's been doing a series called Digital Money and Digital Assets on the Solari Report. And Mark, he just did one with Whitney, and then I've done one with him. But we talk about the possibilities of how they might use Bitcoin, but it's very fluid, and it's not clear. One possibility is they run it up to 700,000, is Larry Fink's number. Other people have said 1 million, and try and use it as a way of essentially debasing the debt. But I think it could just be a pump and dump. They can take it back down to zero because there's no economic value behind Bitcoin. It's simply just right now it's just an asset pump and dump.
Yeah,
but the money behind it is all political, and as soon as the political winds change, it can go to zero. So the question is that I think they're going to try and run it up, but then after they run it up, are they going to dump it or keep it? Mark thinks they're going to keep it up. Last time I talked to him, I think they're going to dump it, but Either one is possible, and I don't think they necessarily know.
That's a good kind of answer here because a lot of people are speculating and they're saying, yes, Bitcoin's gonna be dumped. It's gonna go to zero next year, and other people are saying no, it's gonna go to the moon. And it's a lot of kind of wild west type of markets where I think it's very difficult to kind of even understand. And as you said, politically, depending on where the winds shift, there's a lot of dependent on it. As of course, Bitcoin now has been very kind of associated with the stock market. Recently, it hasn't been. Now it has been. Previously, before it hasn't. It kind of came out as this kind of libertarian tool that has helped a lot of freedom-minded individuals in the beginning. And now we're kind of seeing this administration kind of use this platform to the fullest. Some people are happy about this. Some people are not happy about this. What's your assessment? Are you someone that sees Bitcoin as a freedom asset, or do you see it more as like a track, trace, and database asset?
So here's what's important to understand: what the leadership, what the central bankers want is to implement programmable money. So they start, and by programmable money, I mean that's money that can be connected up to a social credit system and can be used to set a set of rules and incentives for you as an individual and use that to manage and control you. Okay. So it's no longer your money, it's their money, and they can set and change the rules regularly, including instituting taxation without representation. And literally the bankers can then assume control of fiscal policy because you don't need representation anymore. You're under complete central digital control. Now, this only works if you have an all digital system with a high quality digital ID and programmable money. So the first push was to get central bank digital currency, where the central banks in all 190 plus countries around the world issue the programmable money. That ran into a lot of problems and obstacles. And what has happened in the US is the US central bank and Treasury have backed off and said, no, we're going to allow the companies that own the central banks, as well as some other companies, to issue dollar denominated stable coins. And they're going to work under the Genius Act with a pipeline at Treasury, which if you look at how it works, it's designated for know your customer and money laundering, but in fact, it can be used essentially to plug in a full social credit system, is my interpretation of the pipe they've created. We have a great article at Solari on the Genius Act and its implications for financial transaction freedom. If you just do a search for that title, you'll pick it up and understand why I think stablecoins are the new CBDC. It's, instead of the central bank issuing the CBDC, now the banks that own the central bank will issue the CBDC. It's sort of like meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But what is programmable money? Programmable money is no longer a currency, or really money as you and I know it, Luke. It's a set of rules that controls where you can go. It can institute spatial control. It can institute what you can buy, when you can buy it, where you can buy it. If they want you only eating lab-grown meat, you can't buy real meat.
Yep.
So, and again, this only works if you have a digital ID, a high-quality digital ID system like the Real ID, and you get it to go all digital, and you have programmable money, and you have the kind of AI and data center capacity they're building so that you can manage the huge amounts of data that flow in and have to be managed, in a very timely basis. So it's a very ambitious project. And if you look at the United States, certainly, we are doing huge environmental damage, expending enormous resources to build this monstrosity. And I think for most Americans who've grown up under the blessings of relative human liberty, it's frightening. Now, let's go back to programmable money. All all financial products are simply a tool, like a hammer. And a hammer, you can use a hammer to build a house, and you can use a hammer to hit somebody over the head. So there's not anything intrinsically freedom loving or freedom hating about programmable money. It's how you use it. And we don't have a financial problem, we have a governance problem. And you have a secret governance system and it wants total control. That's the problem. And the challenge with Bitcoin or anything on a distributed ledger is it is intended to be used for control. And you have all these wonderful people who've been very excited about the possibilities of digital money. I was one of them in the 90s when I first started to build. We used the internet to kind of revolutionize a portion of the mortgage markets, and we discovered the internet, and we created something called just-in-time money that was going to be all digital on the internet. And I remember how excited I was about the possibilities for financial freedom and for, building prosperity. I remember being very excited. The problem is I discovered, in a very ugly way that the system was totally centrally controlled. And those kind of things would only be allowed if they served more central control. And so I've always believed that Bitcoin was a prototype to create programmable money on a distributed ledger that could be used for a variety of control. Now, if you look at the whole crypto ecosystem, Bitcoin was just the first prototype, and it turned out, instead of being a payment mechanism, it turned out to be a asset pump and dump. There are other cryptos that have been true to form and are payment mechanisms. And then, of course, we have asset tokens and meme coins. So it's a big ecosystem. All of these things could be very useful or at least fun. The problem is in an all digital system where the programmable money is hooked up to a social credit, they're a tool of control. And so I don't know. Right now, our total focus with Solari, we have a 60-day cash campaign, which will be followed by a Christmas cash and coin campaign. Our focus is on encouraging people to do everything they can to command real assets, but also to keep their analog transactions alive. Because if the analog system, whether it's cash or coins or checks, is healthy enough, it's going to be very difficult to implement the digital control grid.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of very important points because they don't need walls outside of those 15-minute cities. They just need to make sure that your credit, your Fed coin, can't work in anywhere outside of your little control grid. Your Uber, that is now a community Uber that is shared by everyone, can't go out of that city. And then, of course, this is just creating a total information awareness type of program that we know companies like Palantir kind of took over after the CIA tried to do it after 9/11, and it didn't work here. What do you make of the British government saying we have to fight migrants? The best way to fight migrants is with national ID. Trump and Kristi Noem kind of made that same argument, saying, no, we need to have real ID. We need to have real ID so we know where the Americans are and who's illegal, and we need to know how to deport them. And I'm like, that seems like just an outright lie and just the perfect excuse in order to roll in this kind of control grid.
So what we have is a group of mega rich and their representatives essentially leading a coup. Because what we're talking about is instituting something that is in violation of our Constitution in America or the basic laws in Europe. Okay? So when the mega rich institute a coup, how did they get people to buy into the coup or go along or not resist? They turn everybody against each other.
Yeah.
And of course, we've known that they engineered dramatic immigration over the last 10 or 20 years, all designed to get the domestic population to hate the immigrants and the immigrants to fear the domestic population. And that's all part of the divide and conquer. And of course, you use the divide and conquer to give lots of excuses on why everybody should go along with the mega rich having more dictatorial power and being able to implement the control grid leading to the coup. It's a ploy.
Yes.
And, you need different ploys. You need ploys for the right, you need ploys for the left. And the immigration and election fraud have been very effective ploys on the conservative side. So yeah. I just see that as yet another ploy.
Yep, because they say the elections aren't safe. We need to safeguard them. Now we need to, of course, make everyone have this type of federally registered identification system that now goes into your IRS records, that goes into your DMV records, that goes into your Amazon purchases, your because in China they kind of do it in a very direct way. For me, what they're doing in China is kind of the playbook of what they tested out to see what works and what doesn't work, how far they could push it, how far people will resist it. But for me, China was always the kind of perfect globalist playground for the elites to say, yes, we're going to push it as far as we can. Now, other people make the argument that China no longer is playing along with this, that they're just kind of using it for their own kind of benefit, that they broke away from this kind of globalist control. What is your understanding of kind of China here, because they seem like the kind of forefront when it comes to digital ID, finding people for jaywalking without even needing to do anything other than scan their face. There's a whole bunch of facial recognition that the United States is now trying to implement, especially now at TSA. People don't understand that those are voluntary. Now they're doing it at passport control, even if you're an American citizen. And I remember going through passport control, coming back into America, and the guy's like, okay, we're going to scan your face. I'm like, no, you're not. I'm like, is this voluntary? He's like, oh yeah, it
No,
is.
if you walk up and you say, I'm an opt-out, they immediately respect it. You just have to use the magic word opt-out.
Yeah.
So I think China is different. I get very mixed reports on how ubiquitous the social credit system is. China's very digitized. And some of that digitization is not is used effectively. If you look at what it takes to sort of navigate, get on the train, pick something up in the train station, it in that sense it's working well. I think China is a great example of why tyranny doesn't work. I know of so many people who love to get out of China and get their money out of China. I don't know China as well as I know Hong Kong. And I studied for a year in Hong Kong when I was in college. And Hong Kong was really one of the most amazing cities of the world. And it always ranked number one on the charts of the most innovative cities. It's a port and people come from all over the world, and it had the most dynamic culture, and everybody was always positive and upbeat. I went back in 2018 to visit and took a tour of Chengchi University, my old college. It's part of the Chinese university system. And Luke, seeing the grief and the sadness in the students, and how, people just felt they had no future, it was hopeless. And to see Hong Kong going from this lively, vital, sort of free place to feeling the tyranny coming in. Once they put the bridge up to the mainland, you could really feel the tyranny come in. And I was there in 96 when the handover happened, and then to come back in 2018 and feel all the life went out of the place. And I hate to say this, every time I live half the year in Europe, so I'm a little bit more than half the year in the Netherlands, and whenever I come back to the United States, I feel it's not so much the tyranny like you feel and the fear the way you felt it in Hong Kong in 2018, but I feel the mind control. I mean, that if you look at the entrainment technology and the mind control and the propaganda, it's I just feel, it's just terrible. So the tyranny is really hurting. And one of the things I understand that many people don't have the opportunity to understand, because I built software tools that would allow me to look at all the federal money and credit on a place-based basis in the 90s, and I was able to simulate what could happen to the economy if we just allowed things to work based on economic optimization instead of central control. What I can tell you is the possibilities, the wealth building possibilities of freedom, if we could really revive freedom in America, is phenomenal. Now, the unfortunate thing is, in many countries, you see them forcing people into programmable money with sticks. Here, they're promising huge and hideous profits. Come into crypto and we'll all get rich. And if you don't come into crypto, you'll be broke. And, I mean, you listen to the pitch as well.
Hmm.
But it's kind of, it's a honey trap. And they're throwing huge amounts of money at people to get into the honey trap.
Yep. Now, I remember I was in Hong Kong and I was there throughout the years when the protests were there and they started to ramp up and become more and more serious. I was there on the ground reporting, getting tear gassed with all the people getting tear gassed, reporting the situation. And I share some of those same kind of sentiments since I was there on the ground speaking to people doing on the ground reporting. And it was a sight to see, to say the least here. But I think you make a good kind of nuanced point because humanity doesn't really progress with top-down control. It progresses when it has a lot of liberty, when it has a lot of privacy, when it has a lot of freedom, when it has a lot of ability to actually transact in a way where the kind of real free market, because I don't think we live under a free market. I think we live with communism for the super rich and everyone else just gets kind of screwed over, especially now with the donor class being as powerful as they are here. But
I don't think it's communism I think it's the Sheriff of Nottingham for the rich. I mean, it's plunder. Did you ever see those old TV shows where they give somebody a shopping basket and anything they can get in the basket in 4 minutes they get to keep?
Oh yeah, I remember
so
those on Married with Children. Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of like a global sweepstakes where the billionaires are literally cooperating to take as much as they possibly can.
Yeah.
It's like plunder.
I made the argument that it's like the Titanic sinking and they're just stealing all the silverware and getting on their speedboats while everyone else is stuck on the Titanic. That's usually a reference I make. But I wanted to ask you, I mean, it is kind of universally true that humanity progresses under freedom and it regresses under top-down control. What do you think is going on here in the minds of these kind of individuals? Because there's multiple ways to kind of understand this. Some people take the religious route and talk about how there's always a demonic force of powerful individuals that want to subjugate, control, and rule the entire world. Other people talk about just normal human psychology. But what do you think is behind the scenes of this kind of push to subjugate and control all of humanity?
So I think you have a couple of things happening at the same time. First of all, we have legacy systems that, are very into central power. And, like the City of London or like the Vatican. And they are enormous investment syndicates. And digital technology is changing everything and giving them the ability to centralize ownership and control even more, but it's also threatening them. So they're trying to evolve their models and use the digital technology to extend their power system sort of into the next series of generations. Every 80 to 120 years, the central bankers go through a reset. And what's interesting, we are in a reset. They reviewed a reset plan in 2019, the Going Direct Reset. You can read all about it, Solari report. So we are in one of those 80 to 120 year major resets. This time, though, instead of just evolving the currency, we're looking at using new technology essentially to end currency at the retail level is what they're talking about doing and instituting technocracy. So this is a major, major change. And if you go back to the 90s, and I have an online book called Dylan Reed and the Aristocracy of Stock Profits, where I talk about this, we knew we had to change the model. So we knew we were coming into a reset. And the question was, you can do what I call a building wealth reset, where you decentralize a lot of economic power and let free markets really happen to the more than they do now, or you could go to complete control. And I think they chose complete control. The question, of course, you asked, the right question is why. One of my questions, and it's unanswered, is what does geophysical risks have to do with this? Because I do think they are concerned about geophysical risks. And of course, if you come to Solari, we have a 4 times a year, we do a section in our news roundup called Unanswered Questions. It's part of News Trends and Stories that we do quarterly and then annually. And we have, during the Unanswered Questions, we have deep dived every possible theory on what the extreme geophysical risks they're concerned about. But I do think that was one of the things that pushed them towards doing the, complete control model.
Yeah, and you really do see a lot of the legislation, a lot of the technology just slowly kind of creep in. This is something that I've been kind of screaming about for like 20 years. I've been telling people ever since YouTube was bought up by Google. I was like, watch out, we're going to lose speech. It's going to be policed here. You're going to lose your rights. I'm kind of numb to it because of how long I've been covering it. But I wanted to get your assessment of where we are now when it comes to total enslavement, and what's the next step from here?
I never say they're going to succeed. Yeah. I never predict that. I don't think they will. So I think they're trying, but I don't think it's going to succeed.
Yeah, most lunatics and psychopaths fail. And when we look at history, it's always the evil forces that look like they're about to just take full control. And then the forces of good kind of come in last minute and always kind of save humanity. That's always kind of the historical trend that I personally see.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, because I do think there's psychopaths in the mix. So if you look at 1 to 3% of the population, I do think, we have a percentage of the population that does have a psychopathy problem. So I think that's definitely in the mix. But I also think you would be shocked to really understand the extent to which the general population has supported the move to to central control. If you look at who's building the control grid, it's not the mega rich, it's millions of people all around the world, including in Europe and the United States, who go into work every day and build it, and then come home and buy from the companies building it, or bank with the companies building it. Or, if you look in their IRA and 401k, they're making money and financing the people building it. And so I don't think the problem is that the mega rich are building the control grid. Problem is all of us are building the control grid and financing the control grid and supporting the control grid and admiring the people who are building the control grid. So we've got to the day we stop supporting and financing the control grid, it stops.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the mega rich, it's not them, it's not the leadership, it's all of us. I mean, I'll sit in these audiences of 1,000 people and someone will stand up and say, what are you doing to stop the control grid? I'm like, what do you mean we, white man, or me? I'm doing everything I can. But if you look at this audience of 1,000 people, you're going to work in building it. You're, buying their stocks and supporting them in your 401k and IRA. You're buying from them. You're banking with them. But what do you want me to do? I can't fight all of you. You're 1,000, I'm 1.
Yep, that's very true, and you bring up a good point. But I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you thought about this, but what does victory look like, and what steps would you like to see humanity take from here? Because I think there are a lot of like little things we could do. Like I always chastise my friends if they have like an Alexa, but now everything's an Alexa. like your microwave is an Alexa. Your fridge now shows you advertisements. Like it's just like how do we get out of this?
So you just stop. We have a great article at Slayer. We're going to republish it for Christmas called Coming Clean. And what you need to do is you need to go through your income statement and your balance sheet and your time. And it's like having a tapeworm. You detox, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a tapeworm, then the way a tapeworm, I don't know if you've ever studied how tapeworms work in your body, but they inject into you a chemical that makes you eat what's good for the tapeworm and bad for you. And so what you need to do is like not fall prey to the injection and then start to detox and get rid of them. So, if you got a job building the control grid, go find something that's not building the control grid. If you're banking with the banks that are building the control grid, we have a great article at Solari on how to build a great relation or a good relationship with a great bank. Come in and figure out how you can get yourself the kind of high quality bank or credit union that you deserve. Stop purchasing from the companies who are building the control grid. I mean, I can give you hundreds of examples, and then look at your savings in your balance sheet. Stop financing the companies building the control grid. Get them out of your, detox the tapeworm out of your mind, your body, your finances. I mean, start buying your food from a local farmer and the local farmers markets, and stop going to a grocery store and buying poison.
Yep.
So there are many things, and the first and most important thing you can do is keep the system from going digital. So use cash as much as possible, encourage other people to use cash. We have a 60-day cash campaign going, and after that, we're going to do the Christmas cash and coin. But and then protect your finances, because these guys are going to try and inflate away the debt, and that means you really have to have your savings based in real assets and not get yourself in a debt trap.
Yeah.
So if you can pay off your debt, great. If you can get invested in real assets, whether it's, a home that works for you where you're healthy and comfortable, or precious metals, or investments in people and companies that really add value in the real economy, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So get real, and get grounded, get real, get resilient. We could go through patches here where, the power goes out for 2 or 3 weeks, and because the data centers need the power, need the water, and you've got to be able to make it and turtle through those kind of periods.
Yep, absolutely. And I always tell people, the world is very volatile, and to always be prepared and to be personally responsible. My advice for people is always, the best currency you could have is social currency. And I'm like, go get to know your neighbor. Go get a pie. Give them a pie, go say hi to them, get to know them, because that's going to be the most important kind of relationship that you could barter with, trade with. I just got chickens myself. I got my plants, I got my vegetables, so I'm doing all that. I'm going to, start documenting that a little bit more. But, I have your article here pulled up on missingmoney.solari.com, talking about how $21 trillion is missing from the U.S. government. I really want to get into not just the underground bases, the tunnels, free energy stuff, but for me personally, I do believe that there's a big potential that there's going to be a kind of currency collapse under Trump's administration. And I think the next step would be, oh, look, we have this digitized token, social currency that's going to fix everything. That's going to be your new information petrodollar. Because they did say, information is the new oil. And it only makes sense that this would be the next trajectory. Do you think that's a fair assessment to make here, or do you think that's a wrong assessment?
No, I don't think there's. Anything's possible, but I'm not a great believer that we're coming into a big bang currency.
Mm-hmm.
What we're coming into is what we've been in for 30 years, which is steady debasement. So your problem is going to be inflation. And everybody's going to try and talk you into crypto, promising you huge and hideous profits.
Yeah.
So I think programmable money is going to be sold much more with honey rather than a stick.
Yeah. Instead of 1984, it's kind of a Brave New World type of scenario where they get you through comfort.
No, it's kind of more like the Truman Show or the Stepford Wives. It's kind of a weird and creepy, but throwing profits at you. So, but there are many possible scenarios, and there's no doubt that the dollar has been falling in terms of percentage of reserve currency, but it's still quite dominant.
Yeah.
So I don't see. To me, your bigger risk is going to be inflation, and then a serious deflationary scenario, including war. So if you look at everything Trump's doing to start wars around the world, we could change the Defense Department's name to Department of War, and it's made very clear he wants to go to war. And if you look at where we're positioning troops or doing things actively, we're talking about many different wars around the world. Now, here's the question: is if you want to lose, attack on too many fronts at once. Mm-hmm. So the question is Trump literally trying to destroy the current system? the administration apparently has talked about dropping military in to control the elections in 2026. That's a coup.
Yeah.
And if you look at what they're doing in the military now, I would say they're violating the Constitution. And there's more than a few judges who at this point have agreed with me. So the question is, are they engineering a coup? And could forcing us onto programmable money be part of that coup? Now, one of the things I'm going to say is it's very important not to say you want to shut down the Fed, because there's $21 trillion missing. It left through the Fed pipes. And if you shut down the Fed, it means they get to keep the money and there's no way to get it back.
Yeah.
Whereas if you audit the DOD and Treasury and HUD accounts at the Fed, and then you can assert determined liability and you can recapture those assets.
And you could be like,
So-
where's our money? Where did it go?
Right. Where's the money? Where did it go? And I, for one, I would audit all those accounts at the Fed, at the New York Fed, and I would figure out where the money went and I'd get it back.
Yeah. Now, I remember asking Ben Bernanke when he was chairman of the Federal Reserve, specifically, I was like, tell me about these secret banker bailouts that you guys are doing. This was right after the 2008 housing market kind of scandal that I think just financially ruined a whole bunch of people. But I was like, tell me about the secret bailouts you guys are doing to foreign banks. He got so angry, he literally tried to rip away the microphone away from my hand. He obviously didn't say anything. And I was like, okay, let's talk about Bilderberg and your participation in that secret society. He didn't like that question either. And then security literally picked me up and dragged me out of the room. But I know I saw conversations with you talking about how potentially some of that money could have been used for underground facilities. Have you gotten any updates about that particularly, especially when it comes to the topic of free energy?
So I think there are many different ways that money was used. The reason that the underground bases got such headlines is I had a colleague, not a close colleague, but sort of distant colleague, who was insistent that I was underestimating how much money had gone to the underground bases. And they insisted that it was, a meaningful piece. And so one of the researchers in the Solari Network and I spent several years estimating out how many underground bases that were in the country and what they might have cost to build and maintain. And we did that just to try and figure out, if what percentage of the money could it be, and it would only be a portion. I don't think it was as significant. Essentially what you're doing is you're saying the current system doesn't work. We're going to start a new system and we're going to suck out and move as much money as we can into the new system. We'll just run up the debt in the old system and then we'll move the money over into a new system. And that new system, among other things, needs facilities that are not, accessible to the public. And so you build some of them underground. And after 9/11, with the Patriot Act, the building of national security facilities was explosive, and a lot of that you could do on budget once 9/11 started.
Yeah.
So I do think there are a lot of underground facilities, and I do think they've invested a fair amount of money, but I think that's only a portion, and I wouldn't necessarily say it was a huge portion.
Yeah. Well, I think it just makes sense also on the surface level with how unpredictable with a lot of the threats that they would think of a backup plan. And if they would have a backup plan, they wouldn't want to tell anyone and they wouldn't want people knowing exactly where it is as well. Since, of course, their backup plan, if there was potentially, a solar flare or a war, would already be kind of exposed to everyone as well. So I think, it does make sense
But
that they
just
would.
remember, if you're in charge of running things, or you think that you're in charge of running things, then it's your responsibility to be able to have things continue even in the worst case.
Yeah.
So just because you have something for the worst case doesn't mean that the worst case is a fait accompli.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very true here. I wanted to ask you about what are your thoughts on a lot of the kind of UAPs that have been kind of showing up here? Because they showed up over in New Jersey last year. The government didn't really give us an answer on that. They previously showed up in Japan. They're now in Europe. A lot of people are saying that this potentially could be advanced tech. And there's conversations about this type of UAP activity being very different than normal drones are, being able to stay up in the ground longer, being over nuclear facilities. Do you think that this is something that might be out of our world or something that might be potentially advanced technology?
So I've off and on in 1998, a group of people in the Navy tried to persuade me that aliens exist and live among us. And in fact, I was invited to have lunch with aliens and I turned it down. I thought it was a setup.
And with aliens? They actually said aliens?
Yeah, they, I was working on a project and I said, I don't understand what the goal, it was a strategic plan for the Navy. And I said, I'm not clear what the goal is. And the guy said, who was leading it said, um, the Navy wants to know what it means to their operations if the American people, when the American people realize that aliens exist and live among us. And I said, well, I don't know that. I don't know that aliens exist and live among us. And he said to me with a dead face, he said, would you like to have lunch with some aliens? And I said, I'm just managing too much risk now to be seen lunching with aliens. And in my mind, Luke, I saw myself checking out at the grocery store, and there's the National Enquirer, and the headline is Fitz thinks she's lunching with aliens. And I thought, this is how they're finally going to get me. It's in the middle of litigation with the Department of Justice. So I figured this is not a good look. Anyway, I said to him, I'm really dealing with too much risk to be seen lunching with aliens. Are there any books I can read? So I'm a speed reader. And literally over the next year, I read every book thought to be credible on the topic of, at that time, UFOs. And the reality is where I'm good is mapping out the money in a situation and using that as a tool to figure out whether it's the mathematics of time and money and other resources, what's reality. And that phenomena does not lend itself. You can map out the money all day long and it's not, it doesn't lend itself. It's too, it's too either paranormal or off planet. So anyway, so off and on throughout the years, I've gone in and looked at this as part of unanswered questions and talked with a lot of people, read a lot of stuff. And what I can tell you is true is that literally you and I and the civilization we're part of is, is interacting with in a covert way one or more civilizations that are more technologically advanced than us. Now, that one or more separate civilization could be what we call the breakaway civilization, which is, when I said they're leaving the system and starting a new system, it's just a group of humans who've decided to go really, really fast and operate on a covert basis. So that's one thing. Or it could be humans who do live on another planet or the moon or whatever and have the technology to travel between the two. There's some people who say, okay, this could be time travelers. There's some people who say it could be a demonic phenomena. So there's no, there's no people coming from different planets or different solar systems. They are just coming between dimensions. So we have a great Solari report called Who is Mr. Global, where we go through all the theories. And here's the reality. I have no idea what's true. What I do know is I've seen plenty of UFOs. I drive around the United States a lot, so I've seen plenty of them. But whether they're ours or, belong to a breakaway civilization or somebody else, I have no idea.
Yeah. Now, if you had to give an answer, if you had to just tell you what your gut is telling you, I'm kind of curious what you would think, because there's a lot of very interesting chatter from this administration. They bring up the book of Enoch and they talk about angels and demons, and we see that from Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. I had a conversation with Tucker Carlson about this, and he believes that there are interdimensional beings. And I had a big dinner with him, and then we did a whole presentation at the GPUSA stage together, and I made sure to get into this particular topic. topic, and he came out and said that there's interdimensional beings that are working with the U.S. government. It seems like what they told you kind of corroborated that. For me, I would be skeptical because I would be like, they're just going to dress someone up just to mess with me to make me look crazy, so I lose my reputation. But that would be my thinking. But at the same time, I'd be like, whatever, let's meet with the aliens.
I'm a Christian, and so I have dealt with what I would call angels and demons. Those are if you look at angels and demons, those are interdimensional intelligence.
Yeah.
So, I can't, I have no personal experience other than I have, in a very indirect way, come in contact with elites who I say are practicing and dabbling in occult practices in a way that I think is very unhealthy.
Yep, absolutely. And when we look at
Right.
a lot of the elites and their kind of secret societies and the stuff that they do, it does dabble in a lot of the occult and a lot of the kind of weird type of energetic.
It's not just the elites.
Yeah.
It's throughout the society. And here's the thing, the corruption that we're experiencing is at all levels of society and from sea to shining sea. And that's the hard part of getting real change, because what you've got to do is you've got to find all the, I don't know, the people who want to go to the light, so you've got to find people who really are committed to alignment with the divine, and you've got to coordinate and network. And that's what Solari is about, because we're about real solutions. And I think the control model is going to fail, and I want the building wealth plan to be ready to go and turtling along as it does fail, because we need, particularly for the young people, we need young people rising up and building productivity and wealth and building the kind of future we want to live in. And we don't want to live in a slavery system. And so we can't wait. We've got to start building the world we want to live in now.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you about free energy, but this topic also fascinates me because I had my own encounters with what I believe to be like spiritual, demonic entities out there as well. And I do believe there's a lot of bigger truths to this. And there are a lot of stories and phenomenons. Every time someone brings up the name Jesus Christ, a lot of these type of like spiritual or kind of dreamlike states that people are in, a lot of the kind of creatures that are visiting them leave whenever you mention Jesus Christ. So there's also that phenomenon that's also reported a lot.
Did you ever see that interview that James Delingpole did with a state facility psychiatrist?
I have not, no.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's a very fascinating guy. Went to a state psychiatric in the United States. So Delingpole's Brit. He's a Brit, but got a hold of this guy. And when he got there, the other doctors said, "Look, leave the paranoid schizophrenics alone. There's nothing you can do for him. Just give him drugs and leave him alone." But somehow this guy started talking to one of the paranoid schizophrenics, and one thing led to another. And what he discovered was, among other things, that if they would say the 23rd Psalm, the voices in their head that was driving them crazy would go away. And he finally concluded that they were demonically possessed. And one of the reasons the drugs worked is it just, so drugged them, it shut down the voices. But they were demons, and they were terrified of the 23rd Psalm. It was great. And so he had all these paranoid schizophrenics saying the 23rd Psalm all day long.
Yeah, and that's a phenomenon that a lot of scientists can't really kind of explain why it particularly happens. And I've seen demonic possession myself previously. It is shocking as wild. People will think I'm crazy, but there is, I think, a bigger spiritual war out there. And for me,
absolutely.
Yeah, and the way I kind of break it down is kind of the spirit of love, creativity, freedom, and then we have the spirit of being subjected, being controlled, being ruled over, and not having any type of kind of personal liberty. That's how I personally see it. I don't know if you mind sharing your kind of outlook.
So I do believe that there is, the divine and demonic is both present. And I believe our souls are immortal, and what we do in this life counts. There's a great scene, one of my favorite movies, Gladiator, there's a great scene where he says, what we do echoes through eternity. I remember once I had a wonderful associate who was a Buddhist and believed that you could, by acting sort of rightly in this life, you could turn around the karma in your family 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. I thought, wow, that's real leverage. But I think we do live, we're spiritual beings in a material body, and we do what we do matters greatly in this world. And we have an option of choosing a path of righteousness and aligning with the divine, which I believe rules the universe, or we can fall and we can essentially align with the demonic. And what you're watching is we more and more we're seeing leadership by demonic impulses, and more people are trying to figure out how to stay in the middle of the road. And what's happening is there's it's like two arcs of light going through a mass, and one's going to the light, the other's going to the dark. The middle of the road is going away, and everybody's going to have to choose.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you on that. I know we only have you for like a few more minutes, and I just kind of wanted to end on maybe on a little bit of a more positive note. But the last kind of questions that I personally had for you were about free energy. Do you think there's a possibility that humanity will have the access to this type of free energy, advanced tech out there in our lifetimes? And
So
could that potentially mean a solution towards the problems that we're facing now?
so we don't have an economic solution. We don't have a financial or economic problem. Okay. Everything that's sold to you as an economic financial problem is a symptom of a governance problem, which is we have a secret governance system that wants complete control and clearly wants depopulation.
Hmm.
So, among other things, I mean, we have Jared Kushner saying he's going to be the last generation to not live forever or the first to live forever. Sean Parker, one of the co-founders of Facebook, we have on record saying he's going to live to be 145, and we're not, and he will because he's a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've always believed. So, some of the people at Solari have run the Breakthrough Energy conferences for years that are so amazing, and their material is up under the Global BEM brand, and because we host their stuff on our servers, and they've shown again and again that there are enormous tech or enormously profitable technologies that can provide enormous amounts of energy. I've always believed the leadership didn't want that energy in use because they were afraid you get explosive population growth and it would be much harder to manage society. They would lose control. Do I think, one of the reasons they may want complete control is so that they can use that energy? Wouldn't surprise me if they're using it in the underground bases or in ways that, we can't see. Whatever those UFOs flying around the planet are, they're using these kinds of technologies. So I think that technology is in the mix here someplace, but um, the leadership doesn't want it out unless they have complete control or um, significant depopulation, one or the other.
Yeah, and I definitely do see the lines being drawn with a satanic death cult that wants depopulation, and other people who want to promote life, family, and just humanity kind of progressing forwards. Another kind of the last kind of question that I have here, because it just popped up in my head. William Cooper, I remember originally reported on these huge football-sized craft underneath the ocean moving 200 miles an hour. We have Congressman Tim Burchett talking about them. We have members of the U.S. government talking about them now. Could this be potentially the breakaway kind of civilization, or maybe some of this advanced free energy tech that's been around and at play here for a while? But again, William Cooper, I remember reading Behold a Pale Horse, was talking about this all the way back in the 90s, which is pretty wild.
So, yeah, but if you go back through history, you can go back and see paintings. And, if you go through Italy, you see paintings with UFOs in the sky in
Yep.
1500s, 1600s, or you studied the airship mysteries in the 1800s. This has been going on for thousands of years,
Oh yeah.
is what it looks like to me. So I think this is a very, very old phenomena. And the question is, who is it? What is it? I just don't know. Um, there's one, have you ever seen the documentary Phoenix Lights, when one of these huge ships comes down the side of Arizona? And so many people see it and film it that you can't deny, that it's real.
Yep. Yep.
So all I can tell you is that we're dealing with one or more civilizations that have extraordinarily advanced technology,
Yep.
and much more advanced than we have access to as a general matter. So we're interacting with more advanced civilizations.
Yep.
Whether they're human or not, I have no idea.
And it looks like the dam's breaking, and a lot of people are starting to understand this. Catherine Austin Fitts, this was absolutely incredible. I can't thank you enough for your time. This is our first interview in like a year, and it's an incredible one. If you're out there, go check out the Solari report. We're going to have it here linked down in the description below so you could see all the amazing work that you've been doing. This has been a pleasure. This has been an honor. I know I have so many other questions. I have so many other kind of interdimensional and demonic things, stories that I want to talk about that I've seen, that I talked about to other people.
Don't
Yep.
forget the importance of the chickens.
Yes, yes. I take care of them every morning. I wake up every morning and I take care of all of the animals that I have on my little, property here, and I make sure all of them are attended to. First thing in the morning, I make sure to get sunlight, go grounding, take care of the chickens,
Perfect.
take care of the dogs, and make sure my first morning routine is. I also now started to do a trampoline jump every morning just to get
Wonderful. Do you have one of the little rebounders?
Yes, yes,
or you have
yes,
a
yes.
big...
Yeah. I have the little one. I have the little tiny one. Yeah.
So I used to have I have these two little houses in Tennessee. I tore them down, one of them down, just country houses. But before I tore it down, I rented it, and the tenant's daughter had a jump king. Do you know what a jump king is? It's got the nets so you don't fall over the side.
Yes.
And so they had a wonderful daughter who loved to boss me. She's very bossy. So I thought, oh, perfect. I need exercise. She's got a jump king. And so I said, okay, we're going to do a class. So I'll say her name was Beth. We're going to have aerobics with Beth and the Jump King, and you can order me around for half an hour while we jump up and down. It was so much fun.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about how like it's a health hack because you're able to like wake up your body. It's like kind of like walking, but instead of walking, you get kind of more benefits just by kind of jumping up and down, and lymphatic drainage and all this other stuff.
It's just fun. It's just fun.
That's literally my morning. It's like jumping on trampoline, getting sunlight, grounding, taking care of animals. And I can't recommend that enough for the people listening out there. My neighbors see me outside. I wave to them because I have good relationships with all of them. And can't recommend that enough. Catherine, thank you so much. Anything else you would like to say? Anything else you would like people to remind people? Where else can people go and support your work?
I think what I would say is the way solutions are going to happen is one person, one family, one income statement, one balance sheet at a time. And one thing we can all do is we can keep the system from going all digital by basically every time we turn around, any way we can, promoting the analog, including using cash and coin or barter or whatever, but grow the analog. I walked in, I was in a great coffee shop in Salt Lake 2 weeks ago, and I walked in and they're playing 33 LPs. It was great.
Nice.
Keep the analog, get, do cash. Just get into cash, do cash, grow your inner analog, because that is going to afford you privacy, and that's going to keep the system from going all digital.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for this interview. Really means a lot to us. Go check her out. Link is down in the description below. Catherine, thank you again. Once again, God bless. Really appreciate you.
Thanks, Luke. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.